We're less than a week away from free agency, and we're going to check in with some national insiders to see what they think the Broncos are going to do in free agency and the draft. And we're going to do that starting now on the DNVR Broncos podcast. And 5 days, 23 hours until the start of free agency. Man, the clock is ticking. We are getting close, and we're going to break it down on the DNVR Broncos podcast, live from the Toyota Lounge inside the DNVR Bar. Of course, driven by your local Front Range Toyota stores here on the set. And we are Zac Stevens. We are Henry Chisholm. We've got you here and Dion behind the camera today. Henry, how you doing on this terrific Tuesday?
Not my best. Not my best. Here's a plug, dropping the mock off season, hopefully a little bit later today. I was up all night, until like 2 working on it. And then I went to bed and I woke up this morning and my body was upset with me. I just can't stay up late anymore without feeling like it's a little bit of not stomachy, but just off. And then Lexi brought me half a donut and I was like, I'm not going to say no to that. So I then ate half a donut. And so I don't know. It's a weird thing happening to me.
Let me guess. I know exactly what type of donut it was. It was a powdered sugar donut, wasn't it?
Is it all over me?
It's all over your mouth. I thought it was toothpaste, but now I know what it is.
See,
it's
because
the donut.
I specifically looked down because this happened to me when we were eating the beignets in New Orleans, and I was walking around looking like an idiot because I couldn't get the powdered sugar out this. It's on my mouth.
Oh, beignets are. Yes. If you want to be clean, you can't touch a beignet. You can't even go close to one because the powdered sugar just kind of jumps on your clothes, especially if you're wearing black all the time.
You just have to wear white, I think.
Right. Yeah.
It might work.
And you don't wear white.
No, I basically got 4 of these hoodies. I got,
I guess your hat, but it's not going to get on your hat.
No, I mean, even that's a little bit
it might. Yeah.
They do kind of explode everywhere. Yeah.
Oh, exploding white stuff. Interesting.
There we go.
Speaking of great things, the Toyota chat is popping off. Shout out to Edward who says, hey guys, great podcast. Our guy, Thiago Portugal. We got Broncos Tube. A lot of people rocking and rolling with us today, and we appreciate every single one of you. To some people, March 4th is not a football day. To the diehards who we do this show for, you guys know we are less than a week away from free agency. This is what we're about. We talked about the combine yesterday. That's some diehard sicko stuff right there when you're breaking down the combine.
Oh, it's real sicko.
What?
What I was doing last night, I was trying to figure out what to do with the Broncos' 6th round picks. Oof.
I know.
You spend
Torrey Horton.
He's gone before that.
Jimmy Horn.
Okay, he'd
and
be there.
If you want a quarterback, you can throw one in there.
Now I kind of want to spoil it. Tez. I did go Tez.
Because
you got to do it.
Yeah. Actually, there you go. Torrey Horton, Jimmy Horn, and Tez. Boom.
Wow.
There it is.
You don't like the Broncos receivers?
No, I just want more depth.
Oh, okay. Well, practice squad depth. But yeah, no, when you start looking, because I was specifically looking for just who's a prototype, 3 techniques, 6'5", long arms. And so you're just going through so many of these defensive linemen to find one guy who fits that. That's sicko stuff.
JJ Pegues. He was, I mocked him in my draft last week going to the Broncos. I don't remember if it was, probably one of those 6th round picks, but you talk about a freak.
Yep.
This guy's a freak. And in fact, so much so he's a freak that at the combine this past week, because he ran, I think he had 7 rushing touchdowns last year at Ole Miss. He's a defensive tackle, but they handed him the ball off. You talk about being a freak. At the combine, they said, why don't you catch some passes, show off your versatility right there.
And then another spoiler, though, is that I had the Broncos bring back DJ Jones. And so with DJ Jones and Malcolm Roach.
That's not a spoiler. You've always wanted
I know.
DJ Jones
and that's why I was
back.
willing to add another spoiler.
Yeah.
That's where I was like, JJ, I don't want a true nose tackle. I want the long, lean, Zach Allen, John Franklin Myers type. And you just don't find many of those in the 6th round. But I did.
Whoa, you did?
So,
okay.
yeah.
Well, you got to tune into thednvr.com. Plus, over at thednvr.com, I dropped my what I'm hearing from the Broncos a week into free agency yesterday. Go check that article out, and then stay tuned for Henry's later today. And again, shout out to the Toyota chat. Luke now chiming in. He's saying he's from Big Four. Go Grizz, Henry.
Yeah.
Best Broncos podcast out there. We appreciate you, Luke. Make sure to drop a comment in the Toyota chat. We want to say hi to everyone that's tuning in with us today. We appreciate everyone. I mean, people joining from Montana, from Colorado, and from Portugal. Way too cool. Shout out to John as well. We appreciate all of you guys rocking and rolling with us today. Henry, just like we're probably going to start every pod for the next couple of weeks, news and notes around the NFL, specifically when it comes to impacting the Broncos here. And let's start with the big news this past 24 hours. Right after our show ended yesterday, T. Higgins tweeted out, tag, period. That was it. Meaning he has been franchise tagged. The guy that so many Broncos fans wanted the Broncos to go out and spend big on, hit a home run in free agency, give him $30 million over, 5 years, 5-year, $150 million contract. That will not be an option for the Broncos or any team in the NFL outside of Cincinnati, with the Bengals placing the franchise tag on him for a second year in a row.
Yeah, I mean, the news kind of broke a few weeks ago, and we knew it was going to happen, and then he tweeted the hat. So everybody's like, wait, that's a cap. He says this is cap. He says it's a lie. And so then all of a sudden we were back to like...
Cap means lie?
Cap means lie.
Okay,
yes, cap means lie. No cap means not a lie.
So then T was no cap because his cap was right.
Well,
because he said they're lying, and then he was right about them lying.
Because they said they were going to tag him. That was the first. First, it was he's getting
so
tagged.
He was wrong.
So he was wrong. So his cap was cap.
Dang.
Yeah. So you could quote tweet that with a cap,
so
and people would think
Bengals
it's
should
funny.
have quote tweeted it with a cap.
I don't think they want to make him any angrier than he already is.
I mean, he's as angry as he can be right now.
Well, if he's maxed out, then why not? Yeah. I mean, T. Higgins is a good receiver. Again, I don't like the idea of paying market value for a receiver right now. Unless market value is, hey, it's Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase. Sure, I'll pay what it takes to go get those guys. But again, like you compare T. Higgins to Courtland Sutton, only one of them has an 1,100-yard season. Only one of them's been to a Pro Bowl. It's Courtland Sutton who's that guy. And I get like he's older. He's you have T coming from a situation where he's the number 2 receiver. And, I still kind of think that helps him a bit because, yes, Jamar Chase gets all the attention, gets a bunch of targets. You also had a quarterback who led the NFL in passing yards last year. Like, there's plenty of volume in that offense, and you get to go up against number 2s. I mean, we saw it when they played Denver. So I think it would have been a bad use of money to go after T. Higgins, unless you had something crazy lined up, like a trade of Courtland Sutton or something like that. So I don't think they would have been interested anyway, but I think I'm taking this as good news because now they can't be tempted.
I agree. This is good news for the Broncos, bad news for the Patriots, who all they want is T. Higgins. Now they're drooling over Devante Adams and Cooper Kupp, and man, that just
so
reeks.
Sad.
It reeks of desperation out there in New England. But when it comes to T. Higgins, what just blows my mind from a non-Broncos perspective is that being tagged for a second time as a receiver only costs $26 million. I would have done this if I was Bengals. I think it's a good move on their end. How when the receiver market's over $30 million and it's a second tag, this should hurt the Bengals. Instead, this is the Bengals getting a discount on T. Higgins because he would have gone out on the open market and got $30 million from the New England Patriots, or $35 million, or heck, Jamar Chase is looking for $40 million right now, I think. He wants to blow Justin Jefferson's number away. Maybe T could have got a desperate Patriots team to jump on that, and instead, you're supposed to be, as a team, if you franchise tag a guy for a second time, you're supposed to be punished for doing that in terms of you have to pay way over market value. I think it's total BS, and they might have to change this franchise tag specifically for the wide receiver position to make it so it hurts the Bengals, because now T in back-to-back years is missing out on that $80 million in guaranteed money, and the franchise tag isn't supposed to be able to to allow teams to get away cheaply on that tag. So I think it's good for the Broncos. I think it's bad for T. Higgins, and very curious to see what continues to happen, what might end up spiraling into a disaster just out in Cincinnati. They've made Joe Burrow happy with the contract they gave him. Joe Burrow's not happy with Jamar Chase's situation. Jamar Chase is not happy with Jamar Chase's situation. Jamar Chase is not happy, and Joe Burrow is not happy with T. Higgins' situation. And everyone just assumes that because the Bengals have Joe Burrow, that they're just going to be great. And they had a great Joe Burrow last year, and they didn't make the playoffs last year. I love Joe Burrow. I think he's a heck of a quarterback, but it might be clear that the Bengals are just absolutely ruining Joe Burrow and their entire franchise right now.
Yeah, I think, going back to the franchise tag, the reason, so it's just late to be adjusted to current values or current swings. And that's because it's the average of the top 5 receivers' salaries over the past 5 years.
Right.
And so when you go back to 2022, again, I'm not sure if they do it by cap hit in those years or by average salaries in those years. But in 2022, the biggest cap hits for receivers in the NFL, Kenny Golladay, 21.1. Keenan Allen, 19.2. Cooper Kupp, 17.8. DeAndre Hopkins, 15.7. There were 4 guys with cap hits more than $15 million. And now, last year, only 2 years later, there were, 9 guys. 2025, they're set to be 19 guys.
Right.
And so you just have you'll have these franchise tag numbers kind of catch up over the course of the next couple of years, and receivers who get tagged will be, they'll be making a lot of money, but it's just good timing for the Bengals.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. I really think that's what needs to happen is I think it needs to be updated so that these numbers reflect more accurately
Real quick,
exactly what's happening
the
right
comment
now.
section. Devante Adams just got officially released.
Yep. Did see that. We're just going to wrap up this conversation before jumping into that. But before we jump into more news and notes around the league, because there's 2 more receiver notes that we got to get to, including that Devante Adams information right there. I want to give a shout out to our friends over at... Here's not being a friend right now, man. He's leaving me hanging high and dry right now. Our friends. Oh, Dion, can you take the controls over again? This is just, oh my gosh.
Somebody broke the machine.
What are we doing? The machine that Dion's been using perfectly over the past few weeks? Our friends over at Lucy. And if you're a little stressed out about that situation, maybe I need to pop a Lucy in right now to calm me down.
Is that what those do?
Give me that nicotine buzz, that vibe that Lucy provides. And if you want 100% pure nicotine, you got to check out our friends over at Lucy. It's always tobacco-free. Lucy Breakers. Here's what separates Lucy from other companies. They've got Lucy Breakers, which are nicotine pouches with an extra surprise. Each pouch holds a capsule that can be broken open to release extra flavor and hydration. And you can set yourself up with a subscription to have Lucy delivered straight to your door by going to lucy.co/DNVR. That's lucy.co/DNVR. Then use that code DNVR over on their website to get 20% off your first order. Lucy has a 30-day refund policy if you change your mind, so you can order without any concerns if you're going to like it. Because if you don't, they've got that refund policy right there. Again, that's lucy.co and use code DNVR to get 20% off. And here comes the fine print. Lucy products are only for adults of legal age, and every order is age verified. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
Also, want to give a shout out to our friends at Coors Light. Let's see. I don't have any real Coors Light situations tonight. I'm not going to the Avs game tonight, although it would have been a fun one with the Penguins. This weekend? What am I doing this weekend? I'm sure I'll do something related. I'm not sure if the Nuggets are here. I'll probably be at a Nuggets or Avs game.
There's got to be one of them.
Yeah. I think Lexi will be here. If not, I'll go with the boys. But yeah, Coors Light, they're such an important part of my life. I hope that they're an important part of yours as well. You know how they work. The mountains turn blue when they get cold. The best beer that you can find. I was drinking a bunch of them on Saturday night. And when you choose chill, make sure that you reach for a Coors Light. It's mountain cold refreshment. If you would like to check them out. First of all, you can go to just about any bar, but you can also choose chill this winter and reach for Coors Light by getting Coors Light delivered straight to your door if you visit CoorsLight.com/DNVR, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
Dion, we might need you to take over the reins of you here back there, but we also might need you to sit in Hank's chair and do some ad reads because he did the wrong ad read on that
really?
one. You got a little excited. You jumped to the second ad read
I did
there.
scroll. It's just the kind of,
It does. It kind of blends together. We'll hit Shady Rays in just a second. But before we do, we got to talk about some other receiver news. As the Toyota chat was telling us, the Jets officially released Devante Admas. Man, some really good receivers available, potentially available. And now Devante Admas, who was thought of as, a top 3 receiver just a year ago, like before the Raiders really ruined him. And then Aaron Rodgers continued to ruin him last season. Should the Broncos be interested, Henry? You don't have to trade anything for Devante Admas. You'll be able to sign him to your own contract that you want. You don't have to take on a contract that another team signed him to. Should there be interest there?
I still struggle with what I would do with this receiver room because it needs to be better next year. Like, it simply needs to be better. Cortland Sutton, you know what you get from him, and that's a good contribution. If you look at what Marvin Mims did, if he was to take his 5 best games of the season, he was on pace for 1,300 yards. But what really happened is he had 39 catches all year. And, while there are the flashes, we aren't totally convinced yet that he can be a number 2 receiver. Devon Bailey, kind of same thing. You've seen him do some things. Troy Franklin, the playoff game. So it's this tough decision between finding yourself more production there because, you do still have a young quarterback who you'd really like to get some top tier weapons for. At the same time, you don't want to block those other guys. So I don't think that I'd go after somebody who's like a guaranteed starter. I'm more tempted give me like a Juju Smith-Schuster, somewhere along those lines, somebody who you bring in and say like, hopefully this is our number 5 receiver. But, hey, a couple of those catches that he made in the playoffs, you're like, this is something that he can do if we wind up in a situation where we really feel like we aren't getting it from the guys we've got. Devante Admas, the thing that gets me is his age. And I get that he's still productive. This is going to take a second. It's going to be worth it. These are the ages of the NFL's leading receivers last year, just in terms of yards. 24, 25, 22, 23, 25, 25, 21, 22, 25, 23, 25, 22, 31. That's George Kittle. 24, 29, 29, 27, 32. There's Devante Admas. 24, 28, 30. Calvin Ridley. 25, 31. Mike Evans. 23, 27, 27, 23, 27, 27, 30, 25, 23, 22, 29, 22, 24, 26, 24.
Far enough.
But you're talking about like 4 guys in the top 38.
Yeah.
Receivers do not age well anymore. They don't age well. Like, you can go get your DeAndre Hopkins, who's 32 years old. He's not what he used to be, and 32 didn't used to be old. Devante Admas. Again, you're not. He put up 1,000 yards last year. You got to respect it. I think every indication is that paying older receivers is a bad idea. And I think, honestly, some of that scares me a bit about Cortland Sutton as well.
Yeah, and I understand what you're talking about. Cortland just turned over 30 years old. And when it comes to Devante Admas, Henry, I agree with you with a lot of things you're saying. I do think Devante Admas still has it in the tank. Yep. I mean, he's been a 1,000-yard receiver for 5 straight seasons, and the past 2 years honestly, the past 3 years have kind of been a disastrous situation for him, and he was able to turn out 1,500 yards 3 years ago, over 1,100 yards 2 years ago, 1,000 yards this past season, in just awful situations here. So I think this comes down to, should the Broncos be interested? Yes, of course, to add a number 1 receiver to this room right now. And then you go from having some question marks at the receiver room to now you have Cortland Sutton, Devante Admas, and Marvin Mims. And I love that receiving room. However, interest is different than like, okay, do you give up the house for him if he's going to want $30 million a year? No, I'm not doing that. But let's say he wants to go somewhere where he can be a number 1, a number 2. I'm willing to talk if he's willing to take a big discount. This is a guy that was making, I think was supposed to make $29 million this season. I'm not interested in that. No, the Broncos, and I don't think Sean Payton values, I know Sean Payton doesn't value the receiver position enough to give Courtland Sutton a raise to $20 million, to pay Devante Adams $30 million. So I don't think the Broncos are going to do this unless for some reason, let's say Devante says, I want to get back at the Raiders and play against them every season and have some big grudge against them and want to play with Bo Nix. So I think there should be interest. I don't think that the two sides are going to come together and it's going to make sense, though.
Yeah. It's just, to me, it's a tough position where I say, like, Marvin Mims, Devon Vele, Troy Franklin, two of those three being in your top three receivers feels like a bit of a stretch. But one of those top three being in your top three receivers feels like you're not giving them enough credit, like enough opportunity. Like, they've shown enough to deserve that. And so I don't know what you do. And that's why I just come back to, you don't need a top tier receiver, especially for top tier receiver price. What you need is just, maybe a fourth guy who can compete for those two spots.
So you want a Josh Reynolds?
Yeah, I mean, somebody along those lines.
And I don't. We saw that last year. Now, I think that's what the Broncos end up doing. I think they draft a receiver, and I think they bring a vet receiver in. I don't think they draft a receiver in the first round.
Well, I guess we talked about Lil Jordan potentially being something else anyway.
Yeah, no, that's totally separate. Okay. I think that the Broncos will bring in a $3-4 million guy. But we literally saw it last year. Like, the Broncos decided midway through the season, after Josh Reynolds got hurt and wasn't able to play for a couple of months, they just decided, man, we're going to go with the youth movement. Don't block the youth movement that's happening here, especially because I do believe that Marvin Mims is a legit 2 in the NFL right now. You've got Courtland Sutton as your 1. Marvin Mims, I think, is a legit 2. And I think Devon Vele is already that legit 3 right there. If Troy Franklin can jump one of those guys, that's incredible. I think that shows how much growth that Troy has had. So I honestly don't think you really do anything with this receiver room right now. So then that does bring one more guy who's been in the news this morning, Henry, and that is a guy that might be this Josh Reynolds $3-4 million type of guy, and that is Allan Lazard. The Jets, who just released Devante Adams, they are allowing Allan Lazard, receiver, to go and seek a trade. Should the Broncos be interested in him?
Do you know what the numbers look like? How much it'd cost
on his contract? I don't off the top of my head. Okay. I'll look it up.
Because that's just kind of what it comes down to. In that, again, I think going back to the other conversation, you also have to remember Lil Jordan Humphrey played the second most snaps of any Broncos receiver last year, and so if he's not going to be taking those snaps, or playing whatever it might be, you need Devon Vele to step up into that. So there's just an automatic promotion. That means somebody behind him, Troy Franklin's getting promoted. So you're giving all these promotions out for free by losing Lil Jordan. And that's where, like, if there is like an Allan Lazard just to, not to help your ceiling, just because it's nice to have a little bit higher floor, I could get behind that if the price is right.
Okay, and I think the price would be $6.5 million in cap hit that the Broncos would take on this year if they do trade for him. And Henry, I mean, Allan Lazard is a guy that 2 years ago when Sean Payton got to Denver, he tried to sign in free agency. Instead, Lazard went and joined his friend Aaron Rodgers in New York. It turned out to be an absolute disaster for everyone there. Then last year, if you remember at this time, with all the Courtland Sutton trade rumors, Jerry Jeudy trade rumors swirling around, the Broncos were interested in trading for Allan Lazard. In fact, there was a deal where the Broncos were going to send Jerry Jeudy and get Allan Lazard and a second-round pick back. But Woody Johnson, the Jets owner, stepped in and said, no, we're not doing for that.
The Madden ratings weren't good enough.
Honestly, maybe the best thing that Woody Johnson has done in terms of actually blocking a deal. Typically, all the deals he blocks are like good ones that he should let go through. But he blocked that one, so didn't let that go through. So that's back-to-back years. Both years Sean Payton has been the head coach of the Broncos. He's wanted Allan Lazard, and I think it's because Allan Lazard provides those things other than just catching the ball. He will be a blocker. He will do what Sean Payton wants him to do beyond just catching passes in that game. So I think the Broncos will be interested in him. $6.5 million. I think this will probably be something similar with the JFM trade. When the Broncos traded for JFM last year, they immediately gave him a new deal, which brought his numbers way lower, and he came here on a discount. If that happens with Lazard, I would imagine it'd be something similar too, where there's automatically a restructure of his contract to help the Broncos out here. But I don't know how you can look at a guy who's available, who clearly wants to get out, who clearly is a good fit for Sean Payton, who Sean Payton has that interest in 2 straight years, how you can just look at him and say, like, nope, they won't have interest there. Is this a sexy pickup? Is he going to be your number one? Of course not. But Henry, you're talking about him in a similar role as like Lil Jordan Humphrey.
Yep.
So I think people, when they think of Lazard, they just need to reframe how they view what he would be with the Broncos.
Exactly. Like you like him in part because he's a blocker. And like if you're just looking at it as like a Lil Jordan upgrade, there you go. Like you can make that work. Now I think Devon Vele fits that Lil Jordan role really, really well. And so maybe you're looking at Lazard and saying, is there still a need? And I think there would be, because I think when you go out there with Lil Jordan Humphrey and Devon Vele, you're telling the defense it's going to be a screen or it's going to be a run. You're just blocking with those guys. If it's Devon Vele and Allan Lazard, then maybe you do scare the defense a little bit with Lazard's speed, and that can add just a layer of confusion, or it makes it just a little bit tougher to see what the offense is trying to do. And I think for that reason, again, if it comes down to $6.5 million, I think they need just one more piece in that room somehow, whether it's a veteran, whether it's a rookie. If that's the price, then he seems like a good fit for that role.
Yep. And I think Sean Payton also thinks he's a good fit for that role. Henry, one more news and note I want to get to. You mentioned a free agent last week that I think was a dream free agent for you, and it's a defensive tackle with the Cowboys. He is no longer going to be available as the Cowboys place We'll place the franchise tag on him and then give him a long-term deal, 4 years, $80 million deal. What do you think about that?
I mean, he probably wasn't a great fit with the Broncos just because, again, like he's a 3-tech. He plays the same position as Zac Allen does, and Zac Allen doesn't come off the field. And so you weren't going to solve your DJ Jones's missing problem with him there. If you wanted to, you could get cute and say, like, okay, on our 3-4, we kind of go with like our Malcolm Roach in the middle, then choose 2 of the 3 with Zac Allen, John Franklin Myers, and Osa. And then when you go to nickel, you would just say, sorry, Malcolm, there's really no room for you, and we'll just rotate those 3. So like you could make it work, but it would just be tough to get your 3 best defensive linemen on the field at the same time, which to me is a pretty good reason to not spend your $20 million to add a third guy who kind of does the same thing.
Totally agree with you, Henry. I think it's like a good dream free agent signing like you had last week, but I don't think that really impacts the Broncos' plans at all there. Especially you're going to be paying Nick Benito tons of money, and you're paying Jonathan Cooper $15 million a year. That would be just a massive investment to spend on a place that's already has a lot of investment already. Okay, Henry, let's dive in to hearing from some national insiders about what the Broncos are going to do. And before we hit those interviews, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at Shady Rays. We're over at Shady Rays, man. Wherever you live, you need Shady Rays in your life. Whether you're at the beach or whether you're in the mountains around the snow, it's bright. You need sunglasses to cover your eyes. And the great thing about Shady Rays, they've got hundreds of different styles, so many different colors, so many different pairs, where they have something for you, for your dad, for your mom, for your sister, for your friend, for your wife, for your boyfriend. They've got it all over at Shady Rays. And what I love about Shady Rays, all of their sunglasses are polarized. A lot of places will give a massive upcharge for their polarized. Nope, not over at Shady Rays. You're going to get polarized sunglasses when you shop over at shadyrays.com. And the other thing I love about Shady Rays is they're already so affordable in the first place. Like some sunglass companies are ridiculously expensive. Not Shady Rays, already affordable. And then they're going to give you 35% off that already affordable price when you use the code DNVR over at shadyrays.com/DNVR. We love Shady Rays, but over 300,000 people in the world have given them 5-star reviews, so people love them too. So if you want to get in on Shady Rays, make sure you use that code DNVR over at shadyrays.com.
And shout out to Rugged Road. Summer's right around the corner, and that's why you should get a Rugged Road cooler. They are dedicated to creating innovative and durable outdoor gear for adventurers who demand the best. Products designed with the highest quality materials, craftsmanship, and they ensure that they perform in the toughest of conditions. Rugged Road gear built to accompany you on every adventure. And one of the most unique features of these coolers is their ability to always float upright. So if you're floating the river, you just pull them right along with you and they'll just float straight up. Which is really convenient. It means that you don't have to like find room for them in a raft, unless you go through like some crazy stuff, of course. It's lightweight design. Unlike other heavy duty coolers, the Rugged Road coolers are incredibly light, making them easy to transport on any trip without compromising on performance. They're durable. They can keep things cold for up to 7 days. Get ready for your summer adventures with Rugged Road coolers. Head to ruggedroadoutdoors.com and use the code DNVR for 10% off your order. Lightweight, durable, and always floating upright. Perfect on land or in water, so leave the old heavy cooler at home. Get yourself a better cooler for the new season. Rugged Road, your ultimate outdoor companion.
And shout out to the Toyota chat for joining us today. Good vibes in the Toyota chat today. Good vibes in the Toyota lounge today. Again, shout out to Henry. Shout out to you here. Shout out to Dion. And shout out to you guys tuning in with us. We appreciate it. And shout out to Tom Pelissero, Dianna Russini, Bucky Brooks, and Josina Anderson, who I caught up with last week at the Combine. Asked them all a couple of questions. What are the Broncos going to do in free agency? And who would be a good draft pick for them? I kind of wanted to just get the pulse of what the national media members are thinking and then kind of bring them back to a local level by bouncing it off Henry. So let's start here, and let's hear from big-time Tom Pelissero from last week at the Combine. All right, we are here with big-time Tom Pelissero. Tom, Broncos questions for you. Who would be a dream free agent signing for the team?
It's a great question. The way that George and Sean operate, I think, would indicate that they're going to be looking for value-type signings here. I think, to throw one name out, if Cooper Kupp were to get released, I think that's just such a natural fit for Sean's offense and what they want to do. Are they going to go out and spend huge money on free agents? I know they did last year, obviously, to address the offensive line, but they've done such a good job drafting overall that they've got a lot of those internal guys that they want to pay. So I would anticipate they continue to use free agency as a tool, but I don't know that it's going to be, maybe they will. I don't know that it's going to be the big splash signing. Right. And I don't think there's, honestly, in free agency as a whole, I don't think that there's going to be a ton of really massive deals.
Yeah. Who should the Broncos draft?
Yeah, what pick are they?
20.
They're 20th overall pick. I mean, you go to the core positions. George is going to take, the true best player available here. They obviously need to figure out what they're doing in the backfield. I think that's fair to say. Devante is a free agent. I know they like the young guy, but like if you got an opportunity to draft one of the top running backs, I would think, again, just knowing how Sean thinks about those positions, I would think that would be alluring. You can never have enough edge rushers. You can never address the offensive line enough. They've got some things that they've got to figure out there. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of different directions they can go. One thing I can confidently say, they're not going to draft a quarterback.
Yeah, that's it. Big time Tom. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Going to draft a quarterback with their first round
Not with the first pick.
I think there was actually a lot of great stuff in just that minute 45 that I was able to talk to Tom last week. And Henry, before we talk about it, I don't know if make people aware. Tom Pelissero, very, very close with George Payton.
Yes.
And he mentioned, I know Sean and stuff, very close with George Payton. So you listen to what he says, and you don't take it with a grain of salt. You take it with a little more than that. What stood out to you there, Henry?
Start from the beginning, Cooper Kupp. I agree. I think it depends on the money, and obviously he's going to be 32, and that's a concern to me. At the same time, if
you want to read off the top 38 receivers,
I would love to. I think it's good content.
Yeah. No, it was.
I think it's great content.
It was good points.
I said it really fast. People enjoy that.
You want to do it again?
I don't have it pulled up anymore. I had too many things open, so I had to close them. But yeah, he'll be 32, which is a concern. At the same time, though, I agree that he's a good fit. Again, 6'2", capable blocker. There's a nice starting point. Can play from the slot, which is still the one thing the Broncos don't have, is a slot receiver. Like somebody who they can just trust to get open close to the line of scrimmage over and over and over again. And you hope that Devon Vele maybe gets to that point, but again, he's certainly not prototype. You hope that Marvin Mims can, add to his route tree. You're still waiting to see him kind of get to the point where he's seen as like a diverse receiver instead of a guy who, you run him downfield, you run him on a crosser, you get him the ball on screen, he can make something happen. Everything else, we just got to see a little bit more. Cooper Kupp solves that problem. He's a reliable option. still, I mean, again, he's only played the 33 games in the past 3 years. Not ideal. But in any season, every season of his career, other than his rookie year, his yards per game, if he played a full season, would be at least 1,000 yards. So there is still that level of consistency when he is on the field. If you're just looking for a guy, like, again, to take that group of 3 competing for the 2 starting spots, add a 4th in there, and he probably gets one of them, I think that he fits that really well. You just don't want to pay too much.
Yeah, 100%, and that's why what Tom said is key. If the Rams release Cooper Kupp, you're not trading for him. And I know for a fact the Broncos will not trade for Cooper Kupp. The price for him is just too much, being $20 million a year plus any draft assets that you have to give up. Even if it's a 6th-round pick, you're not doing it because you're not paying him $20 million. You are only going to be interested in Cooper Kupp from a Broncos perspective if he gets released and then he's willing to take $4 million. Now, there's some reports that are coming out over the last 24 hours that if Cooper Kupp restructures, he could be back with the Rams. He wants to be back with the Rams, I guess. The Rams really like him as a person and as a player for the right price. And Matthew Stafford really wants his best friend in Cooper Kupp back. So if he's going to take, let's say, a $16 million pay cut, he's probably just going to stay in Los Angeles and not go to the Broncos. But I do think the Broncos would be interested in Cooper Kupp if it's for a massive pay cut. I just don't think, again, kind of like Devante Adams, I don't think all sides are going to agree to that. I think if there's a massive pay cut, he's staying in LA. Probably.
Again, if it comes down to Cooper Kupp or Allan Lazard, I'd prefer Kupp for sure. I think, again, if we're saying Kupp or Lazard cost you 6.5, if Kupp costs you 8.5, again, there's a chance you look back and say, that was a bad deal. But, I mean, he's still had over 700 yards every season since, 2018. So even if he isn't out there every time, you could almost see that as a perk if you really want to be getting some of those younger guys on the field too. So again, like, you would love to sign him and he plays every game, and because of that, he picks up 1,200 yards. That's probably unrealistic, but if you pay $8.5 million and he's at that 1,200 yard pace and he gets to 750 because he plays however many games, that's good enough for me to say it was a good deal.
Henry, you could convince me to sign Cooper Kupp for $10 million a year. Yeah. I might even go a little further than that. I just know the Broncos wouldn't go that high for him. But man, I agree with you. I think he might be like the best addition at the receiver spot that you could have this offseason.
Seems like you could learn a lot from him as a young receiver. Seems like you could 100%. Learn a lot from him as a quarterback too.
And then, man, you got Cooper Kupp, you got Cortland Sutton, you have Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, Devon Vele. Like, I'm feeling so good about my room. I just don't think the Broncos want to go in that direction. The other thing that Tom said that caught my eye was the Broncos are looking to just add a tool here and there in free agency, not a big splash. He pointed out how 2 years ago, Broncos did make a big splash. Last year, they didn't have any money, so they had to go and just find tools here and there, and they absolutely crushed it. This has been the sentiment from the Broncos, from Sean Payton, from George Payton, even from Greg Penner. Like, we're going to be measured in free agency like we were last year. If we need to go out and make a big splash, we'll be prepared to do that, but expect measured. And Henry, my feeling is the Broncos are going to try and make one big splash in free agency and then be very measured like they were last year. So kind of a mix of the past 2 seasons, and kind of the money reflects that perfectly. What, $40 million in cap space right now ish? Is that right?
Yeah.
So that makes sense. You can go out and make one big splash and then try to find the Malcolm Roach, try to find the John Franklin Meyer, try to find the Brandon Jones out there.
Yeah, I mean, it does make sense also because this isn't the greatest group of free agents.
Yeah.
Like, you look through the top names and, like, how many of these guys are actually top 5 at their position? Like, Trey Smith at guard might be.
And he's franchise tagged, right?
Did he get franchise tagged? I believe
think so.
It would make sense. I would.
Is Javon Holland?
I don't think so. He's close. He's in there, but I think there's just too many of those guys who it's like they are just, him when you see him, and he's just like, he's almost there.
Yep.
Zack Baun, but with the caveat of, like, it's one really good year, and so you can't really trust it.
Right.
And I guess I also haven't looked at, like, the punter market, but we can just ignore that probably.
I
know Mitch Faboni's a long snapper. He's a top 5 long snapper, I'd say.
Was he a first alternate for the Pro Bowl last year?
Yeah.
Dang.
And he's also a restricted free agent, so he's not going anywhere anyway. So, yeah, I mean, what that means is that teams are still going to be paying like great player money. Teams like the Patriots have their $100 million to spend.
Yeah.
And so if you got to pay a little extra to get somebody, like the market for those guys is just going to be way too high. The value this year in particular for the top guys in free agent market, not good. It's going to trickle down a bit. And that's why it really doesn't make much sense to be going after those guys, especially because they also don't really play the positions you need for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
outside of, I mean, maybe Nick Bolton is a top 5 linebacker
I'd say
in the
no.
NFL.
Again, he hasn't made a Pro Bowl. He's really good. He's one of the best at what he does. But again, there's just Roquan exists. Bobby Wagner's still out there. Like you still just
Bobby
you hit him
Wagner's available.
There is one. Again, with the caveat of 35 years old. But if you're just going, is he top 5? Give it him. We might have to give it to Zac Baun too after what he did.
Well, and you're right, Henry. And then, I mean, it's something Tom pointed to as well. Like, this isn't a loaded free agent class right now. And that's why I think there's just going to be even more investment and more excitement come the draft. But just because there's not loaded names out there doesn't mean you can't have a good free agency. The Broncos had a fantastic free agency last year, and they did not sign a guy for more than $7.5 million, I believe. Isn't that what Brandon Jones was about? Just right over that $7 million mark. So,
and everybody complained because it was an overpay.
Yeah. And
now you look and say like, wow, what a steal.
Yep. Turns out he's the first safety in Broncos history since Steve Atwater to have 3 interceptions and 100 tackles. I think like that.
I believe it.
Yeah. So just shows he's a very well all-around player right there. All right, let's catch up with Dianna Russini, who we caught up with at the Combine last week, and let's hear what she has to say about the Broncos' plans moving forward. We are here with the great Dianna Russini. Dianna, who should the Broncos draft at 20?
All right. Well, this is all about Bo Nix to me in terms of how can you continue to build pieces around him and continue to protect him. I'm thinking O-line because I think that this is a really strong offensive line class. They've got some good defensive players too. But if this offense wants to take that next step, continue to grow, continue to build around who I think is going to be the future of the Denver Broncos, continue to protect them. You saw in the Super Bowl. Look what happens when you don't protect your quarterback. No offense, Patrick Mahomes.
Do you think that's what will happen? They'll go after offensive line?
Possibly. It's still early. They're all doing their homework. You know, this is the week where they really start to figure out who it is that they're zeroing in on. I'm going to say it's going to be a priority for sure.
Yep, I love that. Final one for you. Who would be a dream free agent signing for the Broncos?
Ooh. I would like to get Bo another really good receiver. I would love if T. Higgins decides somehow Cincinnati decides not to tag him. He hits the open market and the Denver Broncos make a decision to pay him a boatload of money because that's what they want to do to try to get this offense running on some high octane.
Yep, love it. Thank you so much, Dianna.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, Dianna, for that. What do you think about that, Henry? Offensive line.
I wish there was a better center. Like if there was like an awesome center in this class, I'd be all in because you see what happened. I mean, it was probably the 2 best centers in the NFL who played in the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
I mean, and it's not it was the same center for the Chiefs and a different center, but maybe even a better center for the Eagles a couple years ago when they played.
Yeah.
Like that is really important when you invest. When you invest so much in the offensive line, you want to make sure that you're getting something from it, which is why you need to go invest in a running back this year because you did the hard part. Now do the easy part and just get a guy who can take advantage of what you did. There's a similar case to be made about going and getting a center and saying like, okay, we had one of the best offensive lines in the NFL last year. If we add this guy, now all of a sudden we can just run teams over and we don't really have to worry about. Like the running game will be consistent.
How was the Broncos center position last year? Without obviously looking at the numbers, was it middle of the pack? Was it bottom 10, top 10? Where would you put it there?
I haven't watched enough of the other centers.
Okay, that's fair.
Because I feel like too many of them just would come to mind, and I'd say something crazy like, he might be a top 10 center, and then you're like, oh yeah, this guy exists. It got worse. I will say that. Lloyd Cushenberry was better. At the same time, you saw growth. You also saw reason to believe that there's more growth to come. I think, again, the athleticism that Luke has is great. The anchor is probably good enough. It's just that when it's time to push a guy backwards, he just doesn't really have that gear to him. And when you're playing with Quinn Miners and Garrett Bowles, there's a big part of me that would say if you just got one more guy who could go out there and just bully a nose tackle, push him back, all of a sudden, like this power counter run scheme, duo type stuff, you could just be running teams over. And I don't know. It wasn't bad enough to say you need to fix it. It was also probably masked a bit by the others. If the opportunity arose, I would like it. But I'd also add, you also got Nick Gargiulo last year. We liked what we saw from Alex Forsythe, except for that one play we don't need to talk about.
And that wasn't even at the center position.
Exactly. So I don't know that you need to go and add like, sixth round, might as well add a center to compete, because you're built out right there. It's just whether you want to add a guy to the top and say, let's make it great. You don't like Forsythe.
Oh, and you don't have a mic either.
But at least he yelled.
You're trying to
at least
talk
he yelled.
with no mic.
At least he did yell.
And I think the Toyota chat, by the way, is not seeing this at all. They
That's
don't
fair.
understand.
Yeah.
I do think there's a little bit more truth to what Dianna's saying, though, and Henry, to kind of what you were explaining. Also, what people need to not forget is how much of the mental side of the game is on the center.
Yep.
And you don't want to put that all on a young quarterback. If a center can come in there and take some of that responsibility and make those checks for the offensive line instead of the quarterback, man, that could help Bo a lot take a step forward. Now, especially since there's not a great center there, and you're going to reach on a center in the first round, that 100% does not make sense. And honestly, I liked what I saw from Wattenberg and Forsythe last year, especially just first years as playing in the NFL. So I'd like going ahead with them, and then after this year replacing them if they maybe take a step back or don't take that step forward. Yeah, that would be a surprise. Now, she does mention defense as well, potentially going defense, and that's kind of what you've been saying. Maybe best player available if there's not one of those guys, a running back or tight end. But what she said is this is all about Bo Nix, and I think that's really what I'm going to take from her is, well, you know what's also about Bo Nix? Getting him a good running back, getting him a good tight end, someone in the center of the field, someone who can be a joker, be that guy that he can turn to when he just needs to dump the ball out. So that's where I'm going to go with that and say not necessarily offensive line, but a playmaker or someone for Bo right there.
Yeah, and just real quick,
Yeah.
I would compare center to PJ Lockett safety, where it's kind of the same thing, where it's like he did enough to get the job done. I guess what PJ would be like 3 or 4 months older than Luke is, but it's kind of that same thing where you say like, hey, this isn't broken, but there's probably room for an upgrade.
Yeah.
What the team is missing is stars, and that's a place where if you added a star, you aren't devastated that you took this guy off the field.
Right, and kind of like what we talked about with the safety position. If the Broncos do use number 20 on a safety, man, Malachi Starks or Nick Emanwuri there, that could be a big upgrade potentially.
Totally.
So
that's
why it makes sense.
If you draft a cornerback, you could say like, oh, it's a position of value, but then you're taking Jaquan O'Reilly off the field. You just don't like that. And that's why, like, if you're looking for star power, center is one of the places where you could do that. Safety is another. They didn't pay Lloyd last year, so they won't pay a guy in free agency.
Right.
But who knows?
I agree. No, I agree with you right there, Henry. Okay, let's hear from Bucky Brooks, who's a big draft guy. Let's hear what he thinks the Broncos are going to do in the draft right now. So who should the Broncos draft at 20?
All right, let me get my head right. All right, so at 20. All right. You want to ask it formally or we good?
Yeah, we're good.
I would say if the Broncos have an opportunity to get a first-rate running back, that would be perfect for them. I think it's two positions that you want to think about. You want to think about how can I help Bo Nix in the offense. One is running back. So if Ashton, Jeanty's there, Amari and Hampton are there, they would certainly work. If there is a big-time tight end, like a Colston Loveland, like that would be someone that can impact the game. When you go back and look at Sean Payton's history, it is about working the middle of the field and really relying on the running game. Those two guys would be ideal fit.
Is that who you think they will end up drafting?
It's so hard, man, because there's so many things that can take place in front of them. What they have to do is they have to be nimble enough to make a pick for the best player that's available in that spot, unless they're going to make a move and be super aggressive and target somebody and go get them. When you're in the 20s, you don't have as much control over what happens in front of you.
Yep. And then final one for you. Who would be a dream free agent signing for the Broncos?
Ooh. Without knowing who's that, I would say that you always want to reunite with a former player that's been well. So Zack Baun could be someone that would be really of interest when you think about it. The success that he's had recently with Philadelphia probably can allow Vance Joseph and Sean Payton to expand an even bigger role than they had for him when they previously saw him. I think that could be a really good pick for him.
Really appreciate it. Thank you. All right. We have an Ashton Jeanty sighting. We have an Omarion Hampton sighting. We have a Colston Loveland sighting right there. Is that what you're thinking, Henry?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if Travis Hunter's off the board, I'm going Ashton Jeanty, and Travis Hunter's going to be off the board.
I was
the problem
gonna
is,
say, wow.
Ashton Jeanty's off the board too. So as much fun as that would be, you probably got to trade up, and I wouldn't mind the trade up there either. I don't know how you structure it because this is a draft where you want second and third round picks, and so to get rid of one of those to move up would sting a little bit. Because again, like trading down would probably be the smart move, assuming things play out the way you expect, which is Jeanty's off the board, Hampton's probably off the board, Loveland's probably off the board, and Warren's probably off the board. And
Oh my gosh,
like that's kind of what the mock drafts are saying. And
you think they're saying Loveland's off the board?
I think Loveland's off the board there.
Oh.
We can have, when I'm done, I'll check the mock draft database, see what the trends are. But yeah, I hope that's what happens. I hope they get one of those guys because, like you said, it's all about winning in the middle of the field. It's something they haven't been great at. The only way they were able to do it was by throwing that dig route to Cortland Sutton over and over. You got to find more ways to attack the middle of the field. They know it. Those are all guys who can do it.
So we've talked a lot about Colston Loveland, Tyler Warren, Ashton Jeanty. What about Amarion Hampton at 20? Is that something we really need to warm up to? Because that is a name that Bucky Brooks, who knows the draft very well, threw out there for 20.
Yeah, no. Again, I think he's probably gone by then. But
Maybe Travis Hunter will be left if all these other guys are going to be gone.
These are the guys who are trending though. Like, oh, good news on Colston Loveland. He's there for the Broncos pick 75% of the time right now. But we'll see. So yeah, I think Omarion Hampton, just 6 foot 220, just runs guys over, and he's very linear. He doesn't make a bunch of cuts. He doesn't have a bunch of wiggle to him, but he runs guys over, and he has like some beast mode in him to throw guys off. He's fast enough to get down the field. You wonder if like DBs might run him down in the NFL, but you're looking at a guy who, if his 40 time was like half a tenth, 500ths of a second better, we might be drawing like the Jonathan Taylor type comparisons. And that's kind of back you're looking at, who's versatile. As much as like we love Jaden Blue, who is like a true joker, plays out of the slot a bunch. I think he had like half as many receiving yards as Omarion Hampton. It's just that those aren't joker receiving yards. That's just swing routes or little screens or those sorts of things. So I mean, that's a workhouse bell cow, solve your running back problem right away. And I've blocked out all my he's just Najee Harris thoughts. So don't.
Or like he's Javonte Williams. I mean, coming from North Carolina, wearing that blue,
he's
and
just bigger.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything you described is Javonte Williams.
Javonte's just stockier. With Omarion, you have like the longer arm, so it's more like throw guys out. And there are some similarities, but I think Javonte had more like burst and shiftiness, more like the side to side, whereas Omarion, again, he's a couple inches bigger, he's heavier, he's just runs straight through guys. That top end speed.
That was
no. If you watch him though,
yeah, that was Javonte.
I think if you go back, you'll see that there's like a different level of shiftiness with Javonte. Again, it's because he's shorter and he's stocky. It's just a little bit more explosive and less long speed.
I mean, isn't Omarion? Isn't he like 5'11"? I don't.
He's 6 feet. I mean, like Javonte, he was not the tallest. I'm not sure what he was listed as, but he wasn't much taller than me at the very least.
Can you guys look that up when we hit Josina Anderson? Look up Javonte Williams Combine and Omarion Hampton, their sizes. And let's get to Josina Anderson. Let's hear from her before we get out of here. And of course, we're gonna hit our Toyota chats and our super chats as well. Let's hear from Josina.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Love the mint colors.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Can I give this to you?
Yeah, of course.
Or I thought they would want us to
I
do
can
interviews.
yeah.
All good, all good.
All right, we are here with big time Josina Anderson. Josina, who should the Broncos draft?
Oh man. Well, first of all, the first thing I actually want to say about the Broncos is the big jump that you guys had from Sean Payton's first year to the second, I think is just really extraordinary, but not unexpected. Obviously, Sean is, it's one thing when you have Drew Brees, but when you really prove your offensive prowess with having a prospect that just wasn't the first pick overall. When Bo Nix first came out, it didn't,
I don't watch a ton of college football, even though I've been covering the NFL for 2 decades. Always wait till the prospects come to the combine. So to see what he became, I think it just took a lot of it. Obviously, if you're covering the league nationally, it took me by storm. So wanted to say that.
Right.
As far as who I feel like they should pick, I personally would like to see them tap into the depth defensive line-wise, just because of the talent that's here. And, if they feel like they could find someone special at wide receiver, just another asset to help out, Bo. And I know that there's talent too at running back, but those would probably be the first things that I would do first. Yeah.
Final one for you. The Broncos, who would be a dream free agent signing for them?
How about you give me a position?
Let's go skill position on offense. Tight end, receiver, running back, to help Bo out.
Well, obviously Stefon Diggs is going to be out there. Amari Cooper is going to be out there.
Yeah.
The wide receiver talent at in the free agency might even be a little bit more exciting.
Yeah.
I think it's really more about the personality fit and whether it blends with the culture of what Denver's trying to do, and whether Bo Nix can handle some of the more colorful alpha personalities that are out there. Certainly from a talent standpoint, I think it would get people going and the juices flowing, in that area.
Yeah.
Obviously, I spent 6 years out there, or maybe you didn't know, but I spent 6 years out there. And so very familiar with the area. But I would love to see them, I'd love to see them add a little bit more flair in terms of personalities, just to overall make the team more, you know what I'm saying, from a national standpoint. You always need some juju, you need some juice. Yeah, I think so. But again, just the jump that they took, I think, is extraordinary. I would love to see what that jump looks like for Bo from year 1 to year 2.
Yeah.
Hopefully, that's not the ceiling, and he can really add some layers. But yeah, I'd ask you that question.
Who should they add in free agency? Man, maybe inside linebacker.
Okay.
Zack Baun with the Eagles. Sean drafted him with the Saints.
Made a big play in Super Bowl.
Oh my God!
Made a big play in the Super Bowl.
That's when the game ended.
Yeah.
That's when he picked that ball off.
Yeah.
Nick Bolton with the Chiefs. I don't know, and I think they go draft in the first, or they have to go offense in the first round.
Nick Bolton would be great.
Yeah.
A lot of ton of physicality.
Yeah.
Just sets the tone. Or that tone setter.
Yeah.
So he would be great too.
Yeah. Really appreciate it,
Yeah,
Josina.
thank
you
you.
so
No
much.
problem.
She said the Broncos are going to add Juju Smith-Schuster?
No, I don't think that's what she was talking about.
She's saying the Broncos are boring. Need personality.
She just doesn't want another one of those who are these guys on the Broncos defense that are so good? That's what she's trying to do. Give us some people we know. It's like
Stefon Diggs. That would be one of those people.
That would be one of those people.
Really quick, Henry, before we continue the conversation, we're going to go into overtime, so make sure to jump over to thednvr.com so we can finish this conversation over at thednvr.com. So sorry, Henry, what were you going to say?
I mean, if you got Stefon Diggs and it worked, incredible.
Yeah.
I think you have to at least admit that if you got Stefon Diggs and he was what he was the 4 years in Buffalo and not what he was last year in Houston, then you'd be saying oh wow, this is the best receiver we've had since Demaryius Thomas. And that's a pretty good situation to be in. Now, what I think about receivers who are going to be 32, and I don't like the idea of bringing in that personality. I just think that we don't need somebody who demands touches around here, because that just seems like it could add trouble. Now, the Broncos could give him plenty of touches, you would think, so it might not even matter. It's not worth the risk.
I had not thought about the Broncos signing Stefon Diggs until she brought it up, all off season.
Yeah.
That would be great. It would definitely give them the flash, the splash, the name. Maybe a couple more cameras out at practice, so maybe he can say something a little spicy.
He would.
For the cameras. But one of the things that Josina said that I want to ask you to wrap up this conversation with the draft. She said there's so much defensive line depth and talent in this draft, and she's spot on with that. Is that one of we've talked about how you could go safety in the first round if one of the offensive guys is gone. Could you see defensive line?
Yeah, and what you'd want, again, it's like that 3 technique or 5 technique. You don't need a true defensive tackle, like nose tackle type. You don't need, assuming you get DJ Jones back. If you let DJ Jones walk, then that's exactly what you need. Go get somebody who's 330 pounds and can just plug up the middle.
Not in the first round, though, right?
Generally not, but I mean, Vita Vea went in the first round. It just has to be somebody
10,
like
I
that.
think.
So you imagining they bring DJ Jones back, which I think they should. You have him, you have Malcolm Roach, defensive tackle set. You have Matt Hennings in any kind of competing for that spot behind him. But right now you look at what they have with the 2 end spots with Zach Allen, John Franklin Myers, and it's Jordan Jackson kind of right there behind him. That's where I think there's room to add another piece. And so it's not high on my list of priorities. It could be a really smart pick that a few years from now, even a year from now, when you say we've got to pay Zach Allen, Malcolm Roach, and John Franklin Myers. Let's save $8 million because we can let John Franklin Myers walk because this guy's good. And you might hit, and all of a sudden you have just a freak pass rusher, and we all know how important pass rushing is.
Yep, 100%. Some news that just came down the wire right now. Old friend Draymond Jones just released by the Seattle Seahawks. Henry, does he make any sense? I mean, you're talking about adding defensive line.
Yeah, I remember back when I thought the Broncos made a mistake getting Zach Allen instead of Draymond Jones.
A lot of people did, not just you.
That was a mistake. I mean, so they were playing him as an edge rusher, which doesn't make sense. When the Broncos were using him as that 3 technique, 5 technique, he'd be a perfect fit. He would shore that rotation up perfectly. Again, it comes down to money and all that sort of stuff. But I could see it working if he was willing to go back to that position. Personally, it doesn't do anything for me.
It'd be incredible depth, but I don't know if he'd want to sign here for depth for not a lot of money. So he wouldn't really fill that DJ Jones spot right there. Okay, before we get out of here, let's jump into the super chats. Got a couple, and we really appreciate everyone who is joining in with us. Hit us with a thumbs up before we get out of here, and also thank you guys for these super chats as well. And first one coming in from Adam, who says, how do you think the Broncos handled Jaquan McMillan being a restricted free agent? Should they have interest in Darius Slay?
Well, the first question is, so he's exclusive rights free agent, so that means he can't negotiate with anybody else. Basically, the Broncos just get to opt into the contract, so he'll be back.
And that's for $988,000.
Yeah.
So you do that in a heartbeat, and you don't worry.
He's
about
actually
it.
960.
960.
Off the top of my head.
Impressive.
Yeah. In terms of Darius Slay, no, there's no interest. I think you've seen enough from the 3 guys that you've got right now that there's no reason to put any on the bench. And he's going to cost you $12 million probably at least. I'm not paying that for a backup.
No, certainly not. And I'm not benching Riley Moss for him either. Riley Moss is the future. And everyone thinks about the Bengals game. And yes, it was a bad game from Riley Moss, but he was phenomenal. He was playing at a legit number 1 status corner position the first half of last season before he got hurt. I'm not giving up on him. Scott Kerr chimes in, and shout out to Adam for just hitting us with a second super chat. Appreciate that, Adam. Scott Kerr says, petition for a tooth or dare segment this season for Henry every week. Glad you guys got good interviews during the week. Loving it. Let's get Allan Lazard. Tooth or dare? That makes me think we ask you a question, and if you get it wrong, we give a little yank to the tooth.
Or would it be I get to choose tooth or dare? So you can either pull the tooth out, or I have to do a dare. That sounds like a bad game for me.
Scott, that sounds great. I love the idea.
Unless the dare was
Scott, why don't you throw us with a tooth or dare right now? Or explain the game if we're totally misunderstanding it right there. Or don't. We'll just go with the way Henry interpreted it.
Yeah, maybe.
You want to go with the way you interpret it?
I decided I want this tooth.
Or you can just do a lot of dares then.
I just feel again, if the dare is we ordered some chicken tenders, go eat them. Then sure, I'd be down for that dare.
Has that ever been a dare?
Probably not. Well, I'm just thinking of things we could dare at the bar, but most of the things that dares generally are not enjoyable.
Drink one of those Coors Lights right now.
See, and that's honestly kind of tempting, but I'm not going to do it.
And Aiden, maybe tomorrow, Scott, chime in and let us know what you mean by that. And Aiden rounds us out by saying, who is a good first-round choice, if not a tight end or running back?
again, if we're talking like I think there's room for a first round receiver. Again, if there's 4 guys competing for 2 spots, I like that a lot better than 3 guys.
Nope.
Matthew Golden is a monster. Again, fits that slot role. I think he could be incredible in the NFL, and specifically in a Sean Payton offense. The catch and run ability. That's if it's not running back or tight end, I think that's where I go.
I don't think the Broncos go that way. Again, Sean just does not value a receiver like that. I would go, this is when I think you flip to the defensive side, and you go and you're looking for best player available on the defensive line, at inside linebacker, at safety, and the 2 names that really just jump out between those guys is Malachi Starks, the safety from Georgia, and then Nick Emenworry from South Carolina. Especially Nick might not be there anymore.
Yeah.
6'3", 225 pounds. He jumps, he runs, he does everything. He just killed the combine. Plus, I think he had multiple sacks last year, tons of tackles for a loss, multiple interceptions, tons of tackles. I mean, his film is just off the charts as well, playing in the SEC as well. So a lot of people in the Twitter chat actually banging the table for the Broncos to draft Nick in the first round. So those are some options right there. You got Matthew Golden, you got Nick Emenworry, you've got Henry Chisholm, you've got Dion, you've got Yahir, you've got Zac Stevens rocking and rolling with you every single day. Tomorrow we're going to be 4 days away from free agency, and we're going to continue to break down free agency. We had a big show planned for today, and it ran long, so we're going to rock and roll some stuff over for tomorrow's show.
That means it was a good show.
Does mean it was a good show. I enjoyed it. Great show. Make sure to stay tuned to thednvr.com. Henry's got an article coming out later today, and while you're waiting, you can go read mine over at thednvr.com. Thank you guys so much for tuning in with us. We will see you tomorrow on the DNVR Broncos podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.